Our story begins with Etchie, a miserable office worker who had just escaped one of his recurring nightmares, the endless search for a job. He had finally found work in a large company and started there with bright dreams before him, watching his colleagues receive promotions one after another. He kept telling himself that his turn would come, that someday they would recognize his effort. Day after day, life passed by while he remained the same, until one fateful day when Etchie was suddenly ordered to transfer to a distant branch without any benefits at all. He did not object and simply went. There he discovered what he had never anticipated. The place suffered from a shortage of workers and even of raw materials. Whenever he contacted the responsible company, their response was always, "Figure it out yourself." Realizing that no help would come, he threw himself into work with every ounce of strength. He assisted the workers, took on his office duties at night, and spent his days consumed entirely by labor, often sleeping no more than 2 hours. Some workers, seeing his dedication, were encouraged and began to increase their own efforts, and soon enough everything was running smoothly. But just as the wheel began to turn and the place succeeded, his manager called again, informing him he would be transferred to another company. Etchie could not even find words, wandering the streets without knowing where he was heading or why he was doing any of this. His thoughts were cut short when a girl riding a motorcycle struck him down, leaving him unconscious. Even self-torment would not let him be. Etchie awoke before the Demon King, who had summoned him to become one of his 4 generals. Etchie did not know where he was or what was happening, but the Demon King welcomed him. Etchie asked, "How do you know my name?" The king replied, "I am the one who summoned you to become my 4th general and also the Minister of Foreign Affairs of my kingdom. I have been watching you since you were hired at that company and transferred, and how you managed to make it profitable. I believe you are well suited for my army." Etchie rejoiced that someone had finally recognized his effort. The king told him that here, his work would be valued, that he would earn more than the richest men in Etchie's world, that he could choose his own assistants, and that he would even have his own office if he accepted the position. But if he refused, the king had no choice but to return him to his world, for he could not force him. Etchie recalled his memories of his world, and the managers who had treated him with cruelty, then answered that his world had not valued him, yet he believed he would be of no use to the army, considering himself nothing but a worthless man. The king, however, raised his voice and said, "I am the one who decides if you are useful or not, and when I say you are, then you are. I have seen your work and how much you struggled in your life. I summoned you because my army needs you, so enough of this talk." His declaration was met with opposition from one of the generals, Omender, who claimed that an office worker like Etchie was unfit to hold the title of general in their kingdom. The 2nd and 3rd generals also rejected his joining. The king then decreed that Etchie must be tested. If he passed, he would remain. If he failed, he would be returned to his world. Without delay, Omender flared with challenging energy, declaring she had heard that people of the other world possessed great abilities and demanded that he fight her at once. She even seemed ready to strike him down, but the king intervened, blocking her and commanding her not to let her emotions control her. Etchie had already fainted before the blow could land. Omender protested that allowing a mere human like him to stand among them was unacceptable, and she would never accept it even if it was the king's decision. At that moment, Etchie regained consciousness and shouted that if he took such a blow, he would die on the spot, unable to resist it. The king ended the matter, declaring that Etchie's test would be to form alliances with neighboring territories, for the army needed to expand. The first to seek would be the Monitor clan. He must gain their trust and bring them into the army. If he wanted further details, he was to ask his companion Omender. Etchie departed with Omender, who could barely stand to look at him. She told him bluntly that the task was difficult and he would not succeed. Etchie thought to himself that she was right. He was nothing but a useless office worker with no magic and no powers. How could he possibly aid an army of this scale? At last they reached the chamber where the chieftain of the Monitor clan was kept. Omender explained that they had brought him there to forge an alliance. Etchie was astonished at the massive size of the door, and Omender told him, "You will understand when you see him before your eyes. And remember, the Monitors do not negotiate, I warn you." The door opened, revealing a shocking sight. A gigantic beast stood before Etchie, who nearly lost control of himself. Omender ordered him to watch how negotiations were conducted. She approached the chieftain and introduced herself. Etchie felt relieved that someone would help him, believing he would surely succeed in the test. But things quickly went wrong as Omender grew angry and quarreled with the Monitor chieftain, shouting, "What is it that displeases you about this chamber?" Then she stormed out with Etchie before everything collapsed. Later, Omender confessed to Etchie that at first negotiations had gone smoothly, but then the chieftain began to refuse everything, objecting every day with the same response. Etchie was shaken with fear, but refused to give up. He remembered moments from his past life, how he once convinced a stubborn client who had rejected everything until he finally agreed. And so, despite his fear, Etchie resolved that he would not surrender, that he must now attempt to solve this problem and face the challenge of negotiating with that defiant beast. The next day, Omender went to the monitor's chamber to see what had happened, only to find the room empty, and she grew anxious. At that moment, Etchie appeared, and she asked him, "What did you do? Did you kill him, you criminal?" He replied, "No, by God, nothing of the sort. He is now reviewing the terms of negotiation with the king himself." She asked, "Negotiation about what exactly?" He answered, "I forgot to tell you. I made him agree last night to cooperate with the demon army." Omender asked in astonishment, "How did you manage that? Are you some kind of hacker?" He replied, "I follow the principle. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never lose." They went up to the castle's rooftop and saw the monitor walking away, pleased with the agreement he had made with the king. The king then arrived and said to her, "This is his talent. Etchie knows how to persuade people and notices things in them that no one else sees." He then addressed Etchie directly. "From this day on, you are welcomed as one of the 4 generals, and no one shall question your abilities again." The king gave him the emblem of a general, making it official. Omender smiled regretfully for how she had treated him, while Etchie himself was overcome with joy, hardly believing he had risen to such a rank without having done anything grand. He thought to himself that in his own world he had been enslaved, trampled upon, and ignored, yet here he was valued. He said inwardly, "I must prove myself here for the sake of those who trusted me." He left his office saying, "Since I have accepted this position, I must adhere to the decorum of this place, and I shall go and greet my fellow generals." He went to the office of Selvid, another general, where a beautiful woman opened the door and said, "I am her assistant, but Selvid is not here right now. I will tell her you came. Now goodbye." She closed the door in his face, but Etchie kept calm and said it was not a problem. He would return another time. He was on his way to meet the last general when Omender came to him and told him the king wanted to see him. He went immediately, and the king said, "My son, there is a clan called the Glen Clan, our neighbors, but there is tension between us. I want to add their strength to our army, and you are the only one capable of forging this alliance." Omender objected, saying it would only bring them trouble, and that she would wear herself out for this mission, but Etchie agreed, and replied, "Thank you, let's go." As they departed, Etchie said, "By the way, I want to meet Nome, the 4th general, and introduce myself formally. I also learned that she is the leader of the demi-humans, and since the Glan are demi-humans as well, she may have useful information." Omender refused to accompany him, so Etchie went alone and found Nome training the demi-humans. He was in awe of her. She approached him and asked what brought him there, and he said, "First, I came to formally introduce myself now that I am your colleague. Second, I want to ask you about the Glen Clan." Nome answered, "Their leader is named Ogre, and he is no ordinary leader. He is a formidable foe. Discover the rest for yourself." Etchie was delighted, feeling that his life had become much better. Soon after, Omender arrived, and Nome handed Etchie something, saying, "Take this with you and leave here, for they cannot stand one another." They then arrived at the fortress of the Glan leader, but the guards at the gate blocked their entry. Omender grew angry and began to release her energy when suddenly a young woman appeared, apologized for the delay, and introduced herself. "My name is Olo. I am the daughter of Chief Ogre." They entered the fortress, and Etchie focused carefully on every detail within. They reached the chief's chamber, and the atmosphere was tense, ready to erupt at any moment. Omender addressed the chief, saying they had come with a message from the king, but before she could finish, he interrupted her harshly. "Who allowed you to speak? Are all women like this, speaking without permission?" Omender stood fuming, but restrained herself with great effort. The chief declared that he knew their purpose, that they wanted his clan to submit to the army, but that would only happen on one condition, that they bring him the head of their king. The group was stunned at such a demand, and the tension mounted. Etchie quickly calmed the situation and said, "Let us think over this matter carefully. Thank you for granting us your time." He then led Omender out, as she was practically blazing with fury. Olo, clearly distressed, followed them and said nervously, "My only request is that you make my father give up the throne, for he clings to it, and to his pride despite his illness." She revealed that the clan was in the grip of a severe economic crisis, and that the people struggled daily just to find food. Etchie said he had noticed as much. She asked how, and he explained, "It was simple. I looked at the soldiers as we entered and saw their armor in shambles, despite them being the guards of the chief's castle. I also noticed that inside the fortress there was no activity, no light. So I suspected you were facing a financial crisis. Olo admitted it was true, that the only way for their clan to regain its former glory was through cooperation with the demon army, but her father's pride would not allow it, nor his failing health. She confessed that they had stalled at the gates earlier only to cover up his weakness so it would not be seen. She pleaded with them. If he were to die suddenly, the whole country would collapse. I beg you, help me solve this matter, Etchie said to her. I understand that you are doing all this for the sake of your people, but it is unreasonable to reveal your clan's secrets to us so easily. Then Oloi drew closer, grasped his hand amid the crowd without anyone noticing, and said, Please, marry me. Marry me and become our new leader. Etchie was shaken and replied, Wait, you have surprised me. Give me time to think, she answered. If you become the leader of our clan, you will save it. The young man stepped back until he nearly fell. At that moment, Oloi approached him again and said, There is no solution but for us to marry. Let us go to the officiant now. You will be my rightful husband. Then Ominder pulled her away in fury, saying, Let him think about it. Etchie returned to the kingdom once more and sat pondering what had happened, not knowing how to deal with the chieftain who refused negotiations, nor with his determined daughter Oloi who wished to marry him. He went to his tavern where he always sat, and there an idea for resolving the dilemma came to him. At dawn the next day he called for Ominder and said, Let us go on a mission. I will explain on the way. While they were in the carriage, he told her that he intended to form alliances with all the clans surrounding the Glen Clan, since they were all suffering economic crises. He said, If we can unite them with us, then the chief of the Glen himself will be forced to negotiate with us. And that is exactly what happened. The chieftain summoned them, and Etchie said, What is the matter, chief? The chief, deeply irritated, replied, Do you not realize what drove you to ally with the tribes around us? Etchie answered, Their conditions are dire, and thanks be to God our army is strong, so we decided to help them. The chief said, Our clan rules this entire region. I will not allow you to do such a thing. Etchie responded, For your information, we did not conduct these negotiations alone. The Glen Clan was with us as well. The chief could not believe it and said, How so? I never went with you. Etchie replied, It does not have to be you specifically. Then he called for Oloi to enter. The chief looked at her in disbelief and said, You betrayed me. Why? Etchie said, It was Oloi who managed the negotiations, for she is your daughter and knew how to deal with the tribes. Ogre turned to his daughter and said, Why did you do this? I never expected it of you. Oloi answered, Our priority must be the future of the clan, and there is no solution before us but to rely on the demon army. When the chief refused once more, she looked at him with tearful eyes and said, Times have changed. All my life I saw you as my role model, but as I told you, the era has changed. The one I once called the strongest has become weak and ill. You must abandon this pride. Etchie then said to the chief, What do you say to forming an alliance now? I am not asking you to be our subordinate, only to stand allied with us. The chief replied, I will think about it. Etchie said, Very well, as you wish. A few days later, Ominder came to Etchie and told him they had received a response from Ogre that he had finally agreed to an alliance with the demon army. Etchie was not surprised at all. Ominder then asked him, What are you doing? He replied, Nothing. The king asked me to find an assistant for myself, and I do not know whom to choose. Ominder said, No risk, no fun. I want you to pick someone at random now. Etchie replied, That is impossible. I was already considering choosing you. Her eyes sparkled and she said, Do you really mean to make me your partner? We only met a few days ago. Her face turned red with shyness, but Etchie did not understand and said, I know you better than anyone here. At that moment, there was a knock at the door. Etchie went to see who it was and found who had come to represent the Glen Clan in the new alliance. She took his hand once again and thanked him for what he had done for her people, saying, Because of you, the lives of our entire clan have improved. Just tell me what you want from me now, and I will do it for you immediately. Etchie seized the opportunity and offered Olo to become his assistant, while Ominder stood there fuming with rage at what she saw. Etchie said to her, I am glad that I am working with you now. But she retorted sharply, Shut up at once. From this day you are a sworn enemy, a traitor, a seducer of women. The next day, Etchie sent his secretary on her very first mission, to establish an alliance with the Bear Clan. She returned to tell him that everything had gone perfectly, and that they had agreed to the alliance. Overjoyed, Etchie was even more delighted when Olo told him, You will also be honored with the Distinguished Service Award. Once I know the details, I will tell you without knocking. Omender entered carrying food so they could eat together. Etchie sat eating the porridge she had brought, thinking to himself, "Indeed, I have received my due here and more, and I am treated with respect, but my world still calls to me with longing." Then he said aloud, "I yearn to return, to eat meat and rice again." Omender replied, "Then the answer is clear. Let us go hunting now." She took him to a forest near the kingdom and told him that it had long suffered from the beasts within and that they should have eliminated them long ago, but she had been too lazy. Since they wanted meat, they would hunt it here. Etchie grew frightened and said, "This looks dangerous. Let us return while we still can." She answered, "Stand firm and know that if you are weak, you will be devoured." No sooner had she spoken than a giant wild boar with a terrifying appearance appeared behind them. Omender commanded, "Kneel, and I will handle this." She soared into the air, dropped with her heel squarely on its head, and brought it down. But the boar did not die. It rose again and charged at her. She dodged its attacks, striking left and right without mercy. But still the beast would not falter. She said, "This is the end for you. I will not let you escape." Then she unleashed her full power, iron manifesting around her hands as her strength surged to its peak. She caught the boar by its tusks, lifted it high, and split it in two with tremendous force. Etchie was astonished by what he saw, but still longed to sate his hunger. Omender carried the boar to the nearby village, where the people rejoiced that the beast would trouble them no more. She told them, "Since it has fallen, we shall all share its meat." Then she took a great leg of it and said to Etchie, "Ready your stomach, I will make you the finest meat you have ever eaten. Step back now." She cast a fire incantation upon the leg, roasting it. Etchie looked at her and said, "Suddenly I feel my appetite vanish. I am no longer hungry." She replied, "Just try it. You will not regret it." He obeyed but wished he had not, for it was the worst meat he had ever tasted. Omender exclaimed, "Instead of thanking me, you say this? You are ungrateful." He answered, "Let me try cooking it myself." He went to the village oven and prepared the meat with his own hands, then said to her, "Taste it." The moment she did, she was stunned by its flavor and cried, "What wonder is this? You are a masterful cook." The day ended, and at night Omender insisted they return to the kingdom. But Etchie said, "The night is dark. Let us wait until morning." She replied, "If that is your excuse, then consider it solved." Omender cast a fire incantation above them to light the path, telling him that the spell would also keep any beast from attacking. Etchie said, "Truly wonderful." Then, as he walked beside her, he added, "Have you never thought of changing your clothes? Perhaps wearing something a little longer, since there might be children watching this scene." The girl suddenly stopped and dispelled her magic, saying, "Perhaps you are right, but it feels as though you are insulting me. The plan has changed. I will leave you and go alone. You shall return to the Glen Clan in the morning. Sadly, I gave you more trust than you deserved. Farewell." Fool Etchie was terrified, unable to understand why she had turned against him so suddenly, and he hurried back to the village to avoid encountering monsters on the road. The next morning, he returned to the kingdom and met the Demon King, who said to him, "My son, I do not know how to thank you. You have secured alliances with the neighboring villages and even helped Omender defeat that beast. What magnificence is this? But why did you return in the morning when Omender came back at night?" Etchie replied, "I am not fit for this position. I cannot even manage with my friends. You must dismiss me at once." The king said, "Stop this nonsense. Go find her and apologize." Etchie wandered the streets in confusion, not knowing why she was upset. Like many of us, he could not grasp what troubled her. Yet in the end, it was clear he was the one at fault. He picked up a book on the customs and traditions of demons, and there he read that anyone with a well-formed and strong body was expected to wear tight clothing and take pride in it. Only then did he realize why she was offended. His words had been taken as an insult. Meanwhile, Oloi rushed to Omender, who was still seething, and said, "Etchie hates me." She sat with her to understand what had happened, and when she learned, she told her, "From what I know of his world, their customs and traditions are entirely different from ours." Omender asked, "So what should I do now?" At that very moment, Etchie came running toward her. When he met her, he apologized for what he had said. She answered, "It is fine, all is well, but do not repeat it again." He said to her, "Consider it forgotten. Since we are reconciled now, what do you say we become partners?" Her cheeks flushed red with embarrassment, while all he could think was, "Will we be able to work together without problems?" A few days later, the Demon King honored Etchie for his achievements for the army and for the successful alliances he had forged, granting him a rare magic stone. Etchie said, "It is an honor to receive this reward, but I believe someone else deserves it more." Then he went to Omender, knelt before her, and offered her the stone. She exploded in anger and shouted at him. For among demons, presenting a magic stone to a girl was considered a marriage proposal. But poor Etchie had no idea. The next day, the Demon King summoned Etchie and asked his opinion about the relationship between demons and demi-humans. Etchie answered, "There is a great difference between them. Demons have the ability to use magic, and that makes the demi-humans feel inferior." The king replied, "Exactly. So the problem lies in magic itself. I want you to devise a way for anyone in the kingdom to be able to use magic." Etchie said, "That sounds admirable, but I think you have chosen the wrong person. I cannot even use magic myself. How could I possibly accomplish that?" The king replied, "That is why magic stones exist." He handed him another stone and said, "I will leave you to discover for yourself how to use it, but I will assign someone to aid you." Etchie asked, "And who will this helper be?" The king answered, "I have spoken to your colleague Selvia. She is the high sorceress of the desert in this kingdom. Do not, under any circumstances, take this matter lightly." Etchie took the stone and returned to the library to read about it, discovering that the magic stones in this world contained immense power and that demons could use them to amplify their magical energy. Yet after much searching he realized he understood nothing, so he said, "I will go to the elder and have her explain it to me." He knocked on the door, and the same girl he had met before came out and asked, "What do you want?" He answered, "The Demon King sent me to Selvid for an important matter." She replied, "She is not here today." He said, "How is that possible? The king told me I must meet her today." But she ignored him and said, "When she comes, I will tell her you visited. Now farewell." She was about to close the door when Etchie placed his foot forward and said, "Can I at least speak with you, since you are her assistant?" She let him inside, and he said, "I need to know something important. I am certain you are Selvid herself, but you are lying. I have 3 reasons for my certainty. First, those decorative glasses of yours. Second, your name does not appear among the palace staff. And third, the king told me you always avoid work, so you disguise yourself constantly." She smiled and said, "It seems you have caught me. I am indeed Selvid, one of the 4 generals." He asked her, "Why do you disguise yourself? You are beautiful and everything is fine." She answered, "It is simple. If people knew my true face, they would assign me too many tasks, and I cannot handle them. I prefer to avoid them out of laziness." Before Etchie could continue speaking about the invention they needed, she cut him off. "Rejected. Everything you just said is rejected. I want to sleep and I will not do anything. Besides, why should I recreate a device I have already invented before?" Etchie was surprised, but then Selvid produced a stone and said, "This is the device I created. It grants magical energy to those who cannot use magic." Etchie said, "That is the best news I have heard today. Let us start producing it at once." But she replied, "I will not produce anything. You can do it yourself if you like, but the cost of one device is 10 million. If you can manage that, go ahead." Etchie was shocked to learn that magic stones were extremely rare and that this device required some of the rarest stones in the world. Then he understood why the king had assigned him this mission. He said, "I have a good idea. Since this device gives its owner a great amount of magical power that allows them to cast many spells, why don't we create another version that grants only a small amount of power, just enough for one spell?" She replied, "An excellent idea. We could use cheaper magic stones." He gave her the stone he had received from the king and said, "We will begin the prototype with this." She grabbed him by the collar and said, "Then we will stay up all night until it is finished." They worked throughout the night until Selvid had completed the device, ready for testing. She decided that Etchie would be the first to try it. He said, "At least let me sleep for an hour. So if it explodes in my face, I will not die without fulfilling my wish to rest." He was swaying near the door when Omender suddenly opened it, knocking him down. She came in angrily to know what he had been doing all night with Selvid. Selvid explained that they had been working on a new invention. Etchie had hardly gathered himself when Oloi came rushing in, saying, "There is an emergency. A flock of giant palace birds has attacked several towns, and we must leave at once." Oloi grabbed Omender and said, "You are our strongest warrior. You must at least defend 3 towns. Meanwhile, Selvid turned to Etchie and said, "This is a perfect chance to test our new invention." She took him to an empty field and threw him the device. He asked, "Did you run any safety tests on it?" She answered, "Do not belittle us. If it fails, only your hand will be cut off." she showed him how to activate it, and Etchie tried it, and to his surprise, it worked perfectly. He cast a simple fire spell and could hardly believe it. Then suddenly, the birds swooped toward them. He used the device again and hurled many fireballs, but they had no effect. One bird nearly killed him before Selved saved him, striking down several of them, while the rest remained at a distance and did not attack. Etchie was astonished but suspected the device was emitting waves that kept the birds away. Soon the birds fled and the device broke. That night they cooked some of the birds they had slain, so the villagers and children who had suffered the attack could eat. Etchie took his meal and went to Selved to comfort her after her invention had failed. She sat down and told him about her past, explaining that she was born into a family of merchants who were all extremely wealthy, but she had left them after facing difficult circumstances. She revealed that those who helped her at that time were demi-humans, poor like her and unable to use magic as well. That was the reason she created her old device, to help them. After her heartfelt words, she encouraged herself and said, "We will try again, and this time there is no room for failure." Etchie said to her, "Can you make 10 of this device today?" She answered, "I can make them, but they will be like the previous ones. They will break anyway." He told her, "It doesn't matter, just make them, and I will handle the rest." In the morning, Selved had finished producing the magic stones that Etchie had asked for, and at the same time the birds arrived, just as he had predicted. But the surprise was that Etchie had planted the stones in the ground, and the moment the birds approached, he activated them all, producing sounds that made the birds flee. Everything happened exactly as he had planned. Selved, the villagers, and Etchie were overjoyed. After that, Etchie went to the Demon King and presented the device they had designed, explaining its ability to deal with the birds and other monsters in the forest. The king was greatly impressed and ordered Selved to begin mass production of the device and distribute it to the other cities. Some days later, Etchie went out to the market to check the state of the kingdom, and of course the shadow Omender followed him. This time he tried to flatter her by saying, "By the way, your clothes look nice." Omender thought it was a date and said to herself that this outing would surely lead to great results. But little did she know that all he had in mind was work. Her joy did not last long before he startled her by saying, "I think my research will be excellent with your help." She asked, "What research?" He answered, "Didn't I tell you? Today we are going out to research the state of the market together." She was bitterly disappointed, and he went on to explain that they were gathering people's opinions and observing the situation to understand what the army needed. They began their tour as ordinary customers and stopped at a utensil seller who welcomed them warmly, showing them cups made of gold. Etchie said, "I will buy them, but I have a question in return." Omender stood there waiting for him to hand her one of the cups, since in their customs, offering a cup to a girl was considered a proposal of marriage. But Etchie shocked her by saying, "Let's go. I got what I needed," and walked away, leaving her stunned. They then sat in a place to drink something, and Etchie said to her, "The alliances we have made have increased our production and created cultural exchange. But there is one flaw. We now have a great shortage of food, and it has become difficult to provide supplies for everyone. The biggest problem is that the main crop, gaim, which the entire kingdom relies on, has risen in price in an extraordinary way." Omender replied, "That's true. I went to a major gaim merchant to talk to him calmly, but he told me he barely makes any profit and is just breaking even." Etchie said, "Then the problem isn't with the merchant, but with the guild that manages the trade. If we mishandle things with them, we could cause a disaster in the kingdom. We must deal with them carefully and find out the cause of the crisis." Then he added, "That's the end of today's research. What would you like to do now?" Before she could answer, Gnome appeared and called out to Etchie. He asked her, "What brought you here today?" She answered, "Today is a special day in our clan, a day like a festival. We give gifts to those we care about." Suddenly, while they were standing and talking, an old man and his wife came calling out to Gnome, asking for her help. Everyone followed them to see what had happened. The woman said, "My husband and I run this shop where we sell a dish called chimizu. Every year the sales have been declining compared to the previous one, until this year when a merchant appeared and ordered a very large quantity. We spent 2 full days preparing the order, but on the day of delivery, after we had finished everything, he sent word to cancel it. Now there is only 1 day left before the food expires, and if it is not sold, we will be forced to close the shop because we will be completely bankrupt." Etchie tasted the food and said to them, "Do not worry, we will save this shop, but first I need some information. You mentioned that the food will expire today, so tell me, what kind of customers do you usually have?" The man answered, "This is an old dish, and our customers were always elderly people, but even they are no longer interested in it." Etchie replied, then we must adjust the dish to attract the younger generation as well. He immediately began executing his plan, guiding the couple to change the appearance of the dish so that it looked more appealing to the youth. Sure enough, people began to gather and buy it, and by the end of the day, they had sold the entire stock. The day ended, and Etchie went to the Demon King to report. He told him that he had conducted research in the market that day and discovered a neighboring nation known as the Kingdom of Gold, and that he wanted to establish an alliance with them, as they seemed wealthy and would benefit their army. The king answered, a good idea, and in exchange we will offer them our new invention of the magic stones. Etchie agreed. All right. But the king warned him sternly, the King of Gold is not an easy opponent. His mood can shift in an instant. I heard that once a merchant deceived him in a deal, and he fed him alive to his crocodile. Etchie prepared himself to travel to the Kingdom of Gold, saying that this time he would go alone, as he was no longer a child like before. Omender warned him of the dangers of that king, saying, if you make even the slightest mistake, it could be the end of you in an instant. Etchie arrived in the kingdom and was awestruck by its bustling market. He wished he could stay longer, but there was no time, for he had an appointment with the king. He entered the hall, and the King of Gold himself appeared. Etchie greeted him and introduced himself, saying, I am one of the 4 generals in the army of the Demon King. But the King of Gold mocked him. Your name is Echimura, Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Demon King's army. Or am I not important enough for you? Etchie trembled and fell to the ground, thinking this was the end. But the king continued, so tell me, what brings you here today? Surely you did not come only to greet me and then leave. Etchie replied, you are right. I came with a special offer that will surely please you. Look at these silver plates and cups. I am certain you will like them. He sounded like a mere marketplace peddler trying to please a demanding customer. The King of Gold grew furious, smashing them all and shouting, do you think you are in a market here? How dare you bring silverware to the King of Gold? Etchie quickly said, very well, let me show you something else. He pulled out the magic stone they had invented. The king looked at it with disdain and said, this is nothing but a stone, of poor quality. But Etchie immediately countered, no, this is a very special stone, and it has a remarkable property you will love. It drives away monsters from any place it is set in. This is a tool possessed by no one but me, and I know your miners are often attacked while working in the mines. This stone will be invaluable for them. The king said to him, very well, sounds good. Let us test it first. Suddenly the hall darkened, and a massive gate opened, releasing an enormous crocodile that terrified everyone. The king declared, if this device makes it retreat, then it works. If not, you will simply die. Etchie trembled and nearly lost control of himself from fear, but he activated the stone. The crocodile turned as if preparing to attack the king, but the king cast a spell that burned it to ashes in an instant while remaining seated in his place. He then said to the boy, I like this device. I will purchase a very large quantity, but all of them must be ready within 1 week. In return, I shall grant your kingdom all this gold you see. Etchie returned to the kingdom and informed Selvid of the order. She exclaimed in shock, are you insane? You want 200 stones in a single week? That is impossible. Besides, the demand for these stones is already increasing. But Etchie replied, we will distribute them only to the border regions for now, where the monsters are. We have already been working for some time, so most places are already stocked with stones. It seems you simply do not want to work, she said, as you wish, 200 or more. And thus, Selvid and all her workers began producing at their maximum effort. As time passed and the order neared completion, Ulo suddenly came to Etchie and said, there is a disaster. All the magical stone orders have been cancelled. Etchie was shocked and went to the girl who delivered the news, who told him that her king would no longer receive the order because he had found a merchant selling the same product for half the price. It was a catastrophe for the entire kingdom, for a massive budget had been spent on this deal, and now it would cause a general deficit, soaring prices, and the loss of their gold. The news spread quickly among the people, and everyone began talking about it. At that moment, Etchie could not understand what had happened. Had the king of the Kingdom of Gold become angry with him perhaps? And how could there suddenly appear a merchant with their magical stone, an invention that supposedly existed only in their kingdom? True to his nature, Etchie thought to run away, so he went to the Demon King and said, all of this is my fault from the start. I resigned from my position. But the Demon King told him, it does not matter even if it was a mistake. Do not run. Find a solution to this problem, then return to me. Etchie left, broken and unsure how to fix what had happened, when suddenly someone attacked him and threw him into a large sack. Imagine being at the height of despair, only to be kidnapped. But when he tried to free himself, he discovered he was not truly kidnapped at all. It was Olmender, who had brought him simply to cook for him, speak with him, and ease his sorrow. Soon Ulo also arrived, bringing food with her as well. Etchie smiled to himself and thought, "It is enough to have these people around me." After they all ate together and the mood lightened, he said inwardly, "I will not give up. I must solve this problem." Meanwhile, in the Kingdom of Gold, the king was taking the magical stones from the merchant who sold them at half the price. The king asked him, "Where did you get these?" The man replied, "You are the king and everything, but this is a trade secret, and I cannot reveal it to anyone." Etchie sat clutching the stone, unsure how to solve the problem. He wondered how the invention could have been copied when no engineer in the Demon Kingdom understood its workings except for Selphid, and she would never sell her ideas. A thought crossed his mind. Perhaps the invention had been stolen from one of the villages where the stones had been distributed. But why would those poor villages sell them, especially when they were under constant attack from monsters? At that moment, Selphid rushed in, her voice urgent. "Disaster! The stones you distributed in the villages have no effect." She led Etchie to one of the attacked villages, where they found the fields devastated by monsters. As he dug through the places where the stones had been buried, he found nothing. The invention had clearly been stolen and was now being sold to the Kingdom of Gold. Shaken, Etchie reviewed the stream of complaints from other villages. His mind awakened with an idea, and he took Olmender to a village that had received stones but had not yet reported any problems. They hid themselves there at night and watched. Soon they spotted two masked figures pulling the stones from the ground. Etchie and Olmender confronted them, with Etchie declaring, "Just as I thought, the stones were stolen from the start. Who sent you this time?" Instead of answering, the thieves attacked, but Olmender intercepted their strikes, countered with her own blows, and forced them to flee. Etchie was satisfied. He had seen enough. Meanwhile, it was revealed that the merchant supplying stones to the Kingdom of Gold was none other than a Demon Kingdom trader named Buta the Swine. He had amassed vast profits from the stolen stones and thought himself free from poverty forever. But when he returned with a cart laden with gold, the guards stopped him and brought him before the King of Gold. The king held one of the few remaining stones and growled, "All the stones you brought me last time are worthless. Did you think to deceive me?" Buta protested, claiming he had never intended such a thing. But the king was unconvinced and sentenced him to death. A massive beast was released to devour him. At the final moment, Etchie intervened, striking at the beast and pulling Buta to safety. The king flared with anger. "How dare you interfere in my affairs?" But Etchie answered calmly, "The only matter I interfered in was the crocodile. Hear me out, then judge as you will." The king, intrigued, allowed him to speak. Etchie explained that the Demon Kingdom had suffered a wave of thefts and monster attacks in recent months. To uncover the cause, they had planted false stones identical to the real ones but devoid of power. Since these fakes had now appeared in the king's market, it proved that Buta had been stealing the genuine stones. Buta fell to his knees, begging for mercy, insisting he never meant to cheat the king. But the king, still furious, summoned another great beast to seize him. Once more, Etchie stepped forward, his words sharp. "If you kill Buta, your kingdom will collapse. He is the only merchant who imports the golden powder from the kingdom of Toki. Without that powder, your entire gold industry will fail, and your nation will fall into ruin." The king's rage softened. He asked, half curious, half amused, "Why defend him? Why even defend my kingdom, when we are rivals?" Etchie looked at him and replied, "Is it not natural to help anyone in need? Must everything be measured only by gain and loss?" The king burst into laughter at his words, then dismissed them, saying, "Leave now. I wish to sleep." Outside, Etchie had prepared a surprise. He brought forth Buddha's family to meet him. Overwhelmed with joy, Buddha thanked Etchie profusely, confessing, "I betrayed you. I stole from you. But after what you've done for me, I swear I will be loyal to the Demon Kingdom. I will change my ways completely." Etchie seized the moment and appointed him as the new overseer of the magic stone trade beyond their borders. With newfound sincerity, Buddha added, "Before you go, there is something I must tell you. I heard from a fellow trader that strange activities are taking place inside the guild district of the Demon Kingdom. It seems a great catastrophe is brewing there." The Demon King summoned Etchie and Olmender at once and said, "You must all know that the price of Gaim, the staple of the people, has risen extraordinarily in recent times." Etchie replied, "Yes, I have heard. Something is wrong. Gaim no longer reaches the markets, and when it does, it is sold at astronomical prices." The king demanded, "How can this happen? And where were my generals all this time? I want this problem solved at once." Etchie's mind flashed to Buddha and to the rumors he had heard about strange activity in the guild building. he said. I must meet the head of the guild first. The next day, he set out to see the guild master. Selved intercepted him on the road and insisted on accompanying him and Olmender, claiming that having someone from the Alf clan among their officers would make the task easier. She fussed about her disguise. Dress so they will not mock us. And they proceeded to the guild, where they waited 4 hours for the master to appear. When he finally arrived, he said with affected calm, "Apologies for the delay. I am Fiber, head of the guild." Selved, furious, snapped, "You left us waiting more than 4 hours, and you arrive as if nothing." He sneered, teasing her about their past. She answered with heat that made him uncomfortable, and Etchie watched, stunned to find that they were siblings. Etchie explained the purpose of his visit. "I came to arrange a purchase of game." Fiber smirked and mocked them, then demanded to see Etchie on his knees before granting a deal. "Beg me a little," he joked. So Etchie complied, bowing and pleading in mock reverence until Fiber laughed and offered the sacks at the current market price, 50,000 per sack. He walked off, leaving them with a warning that such an offer would not be found again. Selved, flushed with indignation, urged vengeance. "Let us burn him, he will not withstand fire," and scolded Etchie for submitting, but Etchie shrugged. Small humiliations do not trouble him if they serve a purpose. As they left, Selved told him the story of her origin. She had been born into a prosperous merchant family of the Alf. She and Fiber shared a father only. Their village had burned long ago, and many women had been sold into servitude to slave traders. She had fled the family and vowed never to return. While they walked, a ragged girl came running after them, calling on Etchie by name. "Please help me, save me from Fiber." Her name was Nia, and her eyes shone with desperation. She said Fiber forced her to work for him against her will and treated her cruelly. Etchie's eyes brightened with resolve. "Do not worry, I will help you." He bought her new clothes, and she confided that her father had been taken and that her life under Fiber's control had become a living hell. Nia added a warning. The guild had spread rumors designed to make people buy Gaim at any price, while the guild itself hoarded a vast reserve of Gaim in secret. Etchie asked if anyone in the guild opposed Fiber. Nia said no, most were his kinsmen, and the rest were bought with bribes. Etchie answered, "Then they have gone too far. We cannot remain silent, but we need strong evidence." Selved proposed a simple plan. "We finish him at night." Etchie refused. "No, lawful action first. We go to the guild in the morning with an inspector." At dawn, Etchie gathered a small force and marched to the guild to search the storehouses. He expected resistance, but when they arrived the place seemed sleepy and empty. Fiber stood and taunted them. "You come early to bother people who are sleeping?" He waved them through and invited them to search at will. They ransacked the storerooms and found them bare. Fiber laughed loudly. "You did not find what you sought. How unfortunate. Last time we had some game, a buyer took it. Tough luck this time." Etchie and Selved left the guild and returned to the palace, each baffled and unsettled. Itchy said to her, "They left no trace, not even anything in their transaction records. Every entry is precise with dates and prices." Sylphit replied, "You missed the core of the problem. How did they know we would come to them? This was supposed to be secret. There is a traitor among us, and it is obvious who it is." Itchy whispered, "Yes, as you suspected, Naya is the traitor." Viper smiled bitterly and told her, "Still, you played your part perfectly this time. You deserve the best reward for that." Naya asked him, "And where is the cloud harvest?" He answered mockingly, "Are you stupid? Who do you think you are to ask me that?" She apologized, flustered. "I'm sorry, I won't ask again." He reassured her, "Do not worry, you are one of us as well. We place the cloud harvest on caravans that travel outside the kingdom, and whenever we need it, we send for it. Your parents help us with this matter too." Naya left trembling, shouting inwardly, "Why was I born here? Why was I born into this family at all? I wished for parents who would hold on to me, not sell me at the first obstacle. I wished they would truly protect me, instead of handing me to Viper, who beats me every day simply because my face reminds him of the sister he hates. What kind of life is this, my child? What brought me to this place where I do not belong? I am sorry, dear viewer, but at least understand the severity of what I endure. The truth is that Naya lived a life no one could bear. Beatings, humiliations, everything a person dreads. She even gathered some information about his elder sister, and learned that her hair had been short. She wished her own hair would grow a little so she would not resemble her. Then, what we all know happened. Viper told her, "I want you to be a spy for Itchy," and she did as she was forced to do, and that was the end of it. Elsewhere, Itchy walked the street lost in thought about his former life, when a sight startled him back to reality. She said to him, "You are walking dazed in the middle of the road. "Look at what I brought with me." Etchie looked in astonishment and saw that she had brought a dragon she had defeated on her journey. He said, "Isn't that the monster that attacks the towns and threatens the citizens in the north?" She answered, "Indeed, I finished it off along with 30 other beasts." He said to her, "Doesn't that deserve thanks?" Then added sarcastically, "How could I forget? Where have you been?" And left her, departing in haste. The next morning, Etchie was in Commander Anaya's office, and Sylphit was present as well. She asked him, "What shall we do now that our inspection has failed?" He said, "At least we know the cloud is not in the guild, and for that I have a diabolical plan." At that moment, Alder arrived with his men carrying something covered. Etchie said, "Come on, begin the plan." Alder pulled off the cover to reveal the dragon meat she had defeated, cut into pieces to be distributed to the people who could not find food. Then Naya, feigning enthusiasm, said, "A magnificent plan. Let me help you. What exactly do you want me to do?" Before Etchie could answer, Sylphit interrupted, and after that, Naya looked at Sylphit and realized her exposure. She waited until they left, then searched the room for papers. Sylphit stopped her in the doorway and said, "Etchie trusts you, and you betrayed him." Naya shouted, "This is all your fault. Don't speak." She hurled a spell at her and fled immediately. Naya ran to Viper and told him everything she had learned, even revealing the meat distribution plan. Viper said to her, "If people find food, they will not buy Cloud at the price we set. When will they start the distribution exactly?" She said, "Tomorrow at early dawn." He asked, "And where will they begin?" Although she knew distribution would start in the city center, she lied and wrote on a small slip that it would begin in a remote village. Viper looked at her with contempt and said, "Do you think you can fool me, little one? Did you imagine your lie would not be found out?" He gripped her by the head and said, "The time for punishment has come, and I will show no mercy." At that moment Sylphit told Etchie, "Surely Viper knows our plan now." He replied, "Do not worry. I knew from the beginning that Naya was a spy. When we first saw her, there were wounds on her body, which meant Viper had been torturing her, and she had told no one. I was not certain then, but when I looked into her eyes, I knew she was lying. It is a skill I acquired in my past life. From that moment, I knew she was a spy." Sylphit said to him, "After all this, you were kind to her? You are truly naive." He answered, "Now that our enemy knows of our plan, it becomes a race of speed. Who will be first to distribute their product?" The next morning, Viper's assistant rushed to wake him, shouting, "There is a disaster." Viper threatened, "If this is not important, I will kill you." The assistant replied, "No, it is very serious. Our cloud harvest has not yet arrived, and the demon army has begun distributing it." Viper exclaimed, "How could they have started so soon?" The assistant explained that he had misunderstood. The demon army was distributing the cloud harvest itself, not meat to the people. Viper leapt up in panic to see for himself where they had obtained the cloud, but at the door he found Sylphit waiting, her sword drawn. She said, "I will tell you exactly where they got it. Do you remember all the harvest you hoarded and sold at outrageous prices? We imported an enormous amount from a neighboring country, brought here by a merchant named Bota. You may have heard of him." Viper snarled, "Do you think you can fool me? It must have been Etchie who stole the harvest." But she mocked him. "You are pitiful. You and Etchie are in completely different leagues. He was playing you like a puppet while sealing the deal, and all you gained was bankruptcy." At that, Viper broke into hysterical laughter. "You think this means you have defeated me? Keep dreaming." He bolted away, and Sylphit pursued him at once, cutting down his guards in less than a minute. She absorbed the spells they hurled with her sword and flung them back upon them. At that moment, Viper burst through the guild hall doors to flee, only to find all the guild merchants standing in formation outside. One of them declared, "We have finished our vote. From this moment, you are no longer the guildmaster, and by everyone's decision, you and your family will be exiled from the kingdom." Viper was stunned, crying out, "Impossible! How can this be happening?" But Etchie stepped forward and said, "Every merchant agreed to remove you after hearing what that girl, Naya, revealed, and after learning what you did to her." Viper raged like a wild beast, screaming, but Etchie told him coldly, "It seems you have forgotten yourself." Viper then dropped to his knees, begging for mercy, believing Etchie naive and soft-hearted. But Etchie answered firmly, "That will not happen. You harmed too many people, and you must be arrested." Driven to madness, Viper transformed into a monster, but before he could attack, he was struck from behind. Yes, it was Sylphit, his own sister, who struck him down. Even those closest to him could no longer bear him. The soldiers arrived, bound him, and dragged him away. As he was being taken, Viper halted before Etchie and said, "If you think you have won, you are mistaken. I was not lying when I said the catastrophe is coming. Everything will end and no one will survive." Etchie then returned to the castle and informed Naya that he would appoint her as his secretary. She could hardly believe it, bursting into tears of joy, never imagining he would give her such trust after her betrayal. And soon after, Etchie was summoned by the Demon King himself, and it seemed that this time a great calamity was about to unfold. The king sent a messenger to Ollivander, and she went out with him. He asked her, "What has happened?" She replied, "Do you remember the incident in the north with the wyvern dragons? The number of these dragons has increased greatly, and they have begun seizing every region in their path. That is why the Demon King declared that this is the catastrophe spoken of for so long. But this time, if we fail to defend the kingdom, there will be no reprieve. The entire kingdom could be erased from existence by these beasts." They arrived then at Fort de Fort, the greatest stronghold of the demon army. They entered the fortress and found Gnome inside welcoming them. As always, Ollivander and Gnome clashed, neither able to tolerate the other, but the sound of alarm bells cut their quarrel, for a wyvern attack had begun. Gnome led them swiftly to the battlefield, and everyone was prepared for combat. There was no longer any distinction between demon or demi-human. As the dragons approached, the army launched its assault, but it was useless. Their strikes did not fell a single dragon. At once the soldiers turned on each other, for as you know, demons and demi-humans bear eternal enmity. Seeing this, Ollivander charged into the wyverns and, in mere seconds, struck down several of them, while Gnome rallied the soldiers, who managed to wound a few more. The battle quieted somewhat, and the soldiers withdrew to rest. At that moment, Etchie stood beside Gnome and said, "I know why they cannot defeat the dragons." She asked him, "Tell me then, why?" He answered, "It is simple. Because of the internal strife between demons and demi-humans. There are 3 exact reasons. First, strategy. Demons have no talent for group warfare, yet each one possesses his own strength. As for demi-humans, they cannot fight except together, for they are weak and lack sorcerers. Second, supplies. Armies demand immense resources, and I will not deny our stores are plentiful. Yet demons consume food 10 times more than demi-humans, because of the mana they burn in battle. Third and most important, the 2 factions are bound in eternal conflict, each loathing the other. And the greatest proof is you and Ollivander. This is what frightens me most. It may be the very reason they turn their blades upon each other." Gnome said to him, "Then what shall we do now?" He replied, "Do not worry. Give me a map of this stronghold." She handed him a map, and when he studied it, he found a deserted village behind the fortress. He pointed to it and said, "This is the solution. Let us go there." They reached the village, and Gnome said to him, "We will carry out your plan, though you have not yet revealed it. But I want you to stand before all the soldiers and give them a speech to inspire them. For you are neither demon nor demi-human, and for that reason, they may finally heed your words." The next morning they mustered all the soldiers. Etchie mounted to deliver an encouraging address, for everyone had heard of his deeds and respected him. He raised his hand but did not speak at once, so they raised theirs and cheered him on. Etchie said, "You know who I am, do you not? This fortress in which we stand is in dire peril. The catastrophe approaches, and we are powerless to face it because of the strife among us. You must cooperate with one another, so we may pass through this crisis. If we cannot resolve our differences, at least unite so we may survive this battle. Each of you wishes to protect his family and kin. This is your chance to do so." The soldiers rallied and cried, "We stand with you in all things." That night, a new assault of wyvern dragons fell upon them. The troops took their stations, and as the dragons drew near, the demi-humans loosed their arrows which found their marks, while those who pressed forward were supported by the demons. This had been the plan because demons cannot fight in tight cohesion, whereas demi-humans fight together. The battle ended, and the attacking wyverns were driven off. But was this the end? No. It had been but a skirmish. That night, Etchie kept vigil and worked while Naya came running to him with yet another calamity. The vast wyverns had assaulted their 2 other strongholds, laid waste to every village in their path, and were now making for the king's castle. Ollivander alone stood against them. Etchie seized his cart and sped to her, finding her fighting a band of dragons by herself. She had reached her limit, and only 1 dragon remained. She summoned all her power, struck it, and cleft it in 2, then collapsed from exhaustion. Etchie arrived in time to bear her to a chamber so she might rest. Naya comforted him, "Do not fear, she is not wounded. She only expended a great store of mana, and she will require time to recover." Even while unconscious, she called Itchie's name, and joy filled his heart as he said, "Because of you, the entire fortress is safe. Rest. We will manage." He returned to his office where Nam brought him the reports received. The entire Wyvern force had concentrated in the north, and she handed him the list of villages struck. Etchie kept watch, seeking a flaw in their enemy's plan, until weariness nearly overcame him and he was close to fainting, when the Demon King himself came to his chamber and said, "My son, you must rest a little." Etchie tried to protest, but the king commanded firmly, "This is my order. Sleep now, and tomorrow you will find a fitting solution. You must preserve the lives of the soldiers." Etchie obeyed and slept until dawn, then rose and returned to his work. He rode to the fortress where the troops were posted, and Gnome met him at the gate. Joking, he said, "This time I come with a plan, and my neck is on the line." Then more serious, "I have found the precise cause. Wyverns attack the fortresses that harbor female demon fighters, which is why they struck the other two strongholds where female soldiers are stationed." He climbed among the troops and, praising their deeds, declared, "We will end this battle today. We will gather all the female demons in one place and use them as bait, and then we will destroy every last dragon one by one." Anxiety spread among the soldiers, especially the women who feared being used as bait, all the more because Ollivander was not present to rally her fighters. Etchie said to them, "I am not the hero you imagine. I possess no fighting power, and you know well that I am not of your world. Yet this does not change the fact that none of us is like another. Demons and demi-humans, distinct tribes, but we share one certainty. We will protect our kingdom no matter the cost." In the morning, all the soldiers were assembled, and Etchie mounted to deliver an encouraging address, for every soldier had heard of him and of his deeds, and they all respected him. He raised his hand but did not speak at once, so the soldiers lifted their hands and cheered him on. Etchie said, "Surely you are all waiting for the brave hero to come and save us, but I must shock you all. No one is coming to save us. We ourselves must fight." The soldiers blazed with zeal after these words, and the plan began. The dragons were already at the gates. The soldiers loosed their arrows but to no effect, for the wyvern dragons were moving straight toward the female soldiers and not attacking them at all, exactly as the plan dictated. When they drew near the women, the real attack began. Fire spells and arrows from every direction. Every dragon that fell was cut down and turned to meat, but their numbers were greater than expected, and Etchie held the bell and watched from above, moving each group of soldiers, until at last the dragons were finished and none remained in that place. What splendor! But do you think it ended so easily? Suddenly, a beam descended from the clouds to the earth, and from it emerged a giant wyvern dragon, clearly their leader. They had barely been able to deal with the ordinary wyverns. How could they face this now? The monster did not even wait for them, but began striking the fortress with fire from above and smashing it. The soldiers were wounded, and the beast did not stop, blow after blow, destroying the fortress completely. Is this the end? The monster turned its gaze upon Etchie, who stood alone and was about to finish him, when suddenly Sander arrived at the right moment and blocked the blow. The dragon lunged at her again, but she dodged, straining all her power, and struck it a blow that severed its arm. Then Gnome came and cut the other arm, and even Sylphid arrived. The dragon was about to attack them, but they gathered all their strength into a single strike, and it was the finishing blow. But they did not rejoice long in victory, for the ground shook strangely, and the mountain before them began to move. It was no mountain at all, but the true Wyvern King this time, and they knew that even if they gathered all their strength, they could not scratch him. Then a magic gate opened, and from it stepped the Demon King, saying, "This time it is my responsibility." The monster hurled itself at the Demon King, but its strike was easily deflected. Then the king invoked a spell that fell from the sky upon the beast, but it was not affected. The creature performed the same spell, but with far greater force, and the whole place was laid waste. Trees, buildings, everything. And this spell ended the battle at last. The mountain returned to its place, and the sky cleared once more. The soldiers cried out in victory, and none could believe they had actually won. Then all began to repair what had been destroyed. The king gathered all the commanders to honor Etchie and his companions. Ollivander, Sylphid, and Gnome were all honored, and when Itchie's turn came, the king descended himself to honor him, saying, "There is something I wish to discuss with you after we are finished here." Indeed, Etchie went to him after the ceremony, and the king said, "I wish to ask you a question. In your view, what is the function of a king?" Etchie answered, "That is very easy. A king is the one who leads the state and controls everything." The king said, Very good, I want you to be king in my place. Shock, and the king added, no one but you is fit to be king. Etchie refused outright and said, you must be joking. The king said, I am serious. What prevents you from being in my place? Think on it well, and then give me your answer. Etchie returned to his office saying to himself, why did I refuse? Perhaps because of my former life where I was marginalized, my confidence shattered 1,000 times and no one reckoned with me despite my diligence at work. No one valued me, they moved me, and when I succeeded in my place, they moved me again. I thought I had shed all these chains in my new life, but it seems they still affect me. I will never be like the Demon King and not even reach a quarter of his power. All I want is to continue serving the kingdom beside him. Why has he put me under all this pressure? I had chosen the easy path for myself. I am in truth a coward, and I cannot sit here and look people in the eye. I must resign and return to a life of insignificance as a weak employee. Etchie entered his office and began writing his resignation letter, but by chance, while turning through the papers, he found a letter from the couple he had once helped in the market, thanking him for what he had done for them and inviting him to visit them at any time. At that moment he said to himself, I will go around to all my companions and bid them farewell before I leave. He went first to Nome to say goodbye, and before he could speak she said, look at this battle. The demons and the demi-humans are now training together. From this moment on, I will rely on you to be the one who solves the problems between them. Then she left him and walked away. Next, he went to Sylphid and found her absorbed in a new invention. She began explaining the details of her new project and did not even give him a chance to bid her farewell. Then she too walked away. After that, he went up to the rooftop to meet Olamander, who was extremely upset. She said to him, you left me for last. You went to everyone else and only I remained. What do you wish to say? He answered, the king wants me to take his place, but I panicked and refused, and I also intend to leave here. She replied, it seems you have forgotten everything these past days. You must find your courage. We are all behind you. We are here to support each other, and if you dare to leave, I will follow you into your world and kill you there. At that moment, Etchie could not restrain himself and wept from the intensity of his feelings, unable to believe he had friends who treated him with such kindness. After all this, he resolved to break the psychological barrier that bound him, took the step, and accepted to become the Demon King. He went to the king apologizing for his delay and said, of course you cannot dispense with my presence, but I am still hesitant when I imagine myself in your place. Nevertheless, all my companions are performing their duties well and overcoming the challenges before them. So I said to myself, there is no escape. I will accept this post and trust in fate. But I want you to remain with me and aid me during this time. The king agreed to this, of course. And here our tale ends, and we hope it has pleased you. Until we meet again in another story.